You know that moment when your boss thinks they've got everything figured out? When they're so confident in their decision that they don't even consider the consequences? Well, let me tell you about the day my boss found out just how wrong he was. My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 31 years old. For the past 6 years, I worked as a legal operations specialist at Pinnacle Consulting Group, a mid-sized business strategy firm in downtown Chicago. I was the person who made sure every contract was filed correctly, every client agreement was up to date, and every legal document was exactly where it needed to be when we needed it. And then, one Tuesday morning, my boss, Richard Thompson, decided I was redundant. Let me paint you a picture of Pinnacle Consulting Group. We specialized in helping mid-market companies optimize their operations and scale efficiently. Our client list was impressive: Fortune 500 companies, rapidly growing startups, and established family businesses that needed strategic guidance. Richard Thompson was the director of operations. He was 48 years old, had been with the company for 12 years, and genuinely believed he was irreplaceable. The kind of guy who took credit for other people's work and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about his MBA from a top-tier business school. I reported directly to him, which meant I got a front-row seat to his management style. And by management style, I mean his talent for delegating everything important to me while somehow convincing upper management that he was the mastermind behind our department's success. My role was critical, even if Richard didn't think so. I managed our entire contract database, over 200 active client contracts, each with different terms, renewal dates, service level agreements, and confidential clauses. I tracked every amendment, every addendum, every single piece of paper that kept our business legally protected and our clients happy. But here's the thing about being really good at your job: you make it look easy, and when you make something look easy, people start to think anyone could do it. It started about 3 months before I was fired. Richard hired his nephew, Kyle, as a junior operations associate. Kyle had just graduated from college with a degree in business administration and, according to Richard, was really sharp and going places. Kyle was fine. He was 22, enthusiastic, and completely inexperienced. But he was eager to learn, and I didn't mind showing him the ropes. I trained him on our filing systems, walked him through our contract management software, and explained the importance of tracking renewal dates and compliance requirements. What I didn't realize was that Richard was grooming Kyle to replace me, at half my salary. The signs were there, looking back. Richard started asking me to document all my processes, for efficiency purposes, he said, so we can streamline operations. I spent weeks creating detailed step-by-step guides, video tutorials, and comprehensive manuals on every aspect of my job. He also started excluding me from important meetings. Client calls I'd always been part of, suddenly I wasn't needed. Strategy sessions where contract terms were discussed, no need for you to sit in, Victoria, we'll brief you later. Amanda Wilson, our HR director, actually pulled me aside one day. Victoria, are you okay? Richard's been asking some unusual questions about your role and responsibilities. Just be careful, okay? I should have seen it coming, but I was so focused on doing my job well that I didn't realize the ground was shifting beneath my feet. It was a Tuesday morning, April 15th. I remember the date because we have 3 major contract renewals coming up that week, and I'd been preparing all the necessary documentation. Richard called me into the conference room at 9:30 a.m. Catherine Brooks, our CEO, was there via video call. So was Amanda from HR, looking extremely uncomfortable. Victoria, thank you for coming in, Richard started, using that fake sympathetic voice that managers use when they're about to ruin your day. I'm afraid we have some difficult news. Due to recent organizational restructuring, we've made the decision to eliminate your position. Your role has been deemed redundant and will be transitioning your responsibilities to other team members. I just stared at him. Redundant? I managed every single client contract in the company. How is that redundant? I understand this is shocking, Catherine said from the screen, but please know this isn't a reflection of your performance. It's purely a business decision. We're streamlining operations and redistributing responsibilities more efficiently. Efficiently? I finally found my voice. Richard, I manage 200 plus active contracts. Who's going to handle those? Kyle will be taking over your core responsibilities, Richard said smoothly. You've done an excellent job training him over the past few months. We're confident he can manage the workload. That's when it clicked. All the documentation, all the training, all the meetings I'd been excluded from, they'd been planning this for months. We're offering you a severance package, Amanda jumped in, sliding a folder across the table. 4 weeks of salary, continuation of benefits for 30 days, and we'll provide positive references for your job search. 4 weeks. After 6 years of dedicated service, of building systems from scratch, of being available 24/7 whenever a contract emergency came up. 4 weeks? We'll need you to work your notice period, of course, Richard added. 2 weeks to ensure a smooth transition. You can use company time to job search if needed, but we do expect you to complete the handover to Kyle. I looked at Amanda. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Catherine on the screen. She had that practiced corporate sympathy expression. I looked at Richard, and I swear I saw the tiniest smirk on his face. Fine, I said quietly. I'll start the transition process today. Here's what Richard Thompson didn't understand about my job. It wasn't just about filing contracts in a database. It was about relationships, institutional knowledge, and the kind of detailed understanding that comes from 6 years of living and breathing every single agreement our company had ever signed. Yes, I had documented my processes. Yes, I had trained Kyle, but there were things you couldn't put in a manual. The verbal agreements with long-term clients, the specific preferences of different executives, the unwritten understandings that kept business relationships smooth. The passwords. Oh, the passwords. You see, in my 6 years at Pinnacle, I had become the de facto keeper of all digital keys. Our contract management system, I was the primary administrator. Our secure client portal, I set it up and maintained it. Our document signing platform, I managed all the authentication protocols. Our confidential file server, I had master access. And here's the beautiful thing about corporate IT systems. When someone has been with a company for years and has proven themselves trustworthy, they accumulate access. Not because they're trying to gain power, but because they're the reliable person who gets things done. IT gives them admin rights because it's easier than creating complicated permission structures. Managers share passwords because they trust them to handle sensitive situations. Over 6 years, I had become indispensable to our digital infrastructure, and nobody, not Richard, not IT, and not even Catherine, had fully realized it. That first day after my termination meeting, I went back to my desk and took stock of exactly what I controlled. Primary admin access to Contract Pro, our main contract management system containing every client agreement, master credentials for our secure client portal where confidential documents were exchanged, administrative rights to our digital signature platform, the only way to legally execute new contracts, access to our secure file server containing 6 years of sensitive client communications, the encryption keys for our backup system, login credentials for 7 critical client-specific systems that I managed on behalf of our biggest accounts. And Kyle, sweet, eager 22-year-old Kyle, he had basic user access to Contract Pro and nothing else, because Richard had been so focused on saving money by replacing me with his inexperienced nephew that he'd never bothered to think about the technical infrastructure. I didn't do anything malicious. I didn't delete anything or lock anyone out. I simply continued doing my job during my 2-week notice period. I came in every day, smiled politely at Richard, and worked with Kyle on his transition. But I didn't hand over any passwords. When Kyle asked, I told him, "Oh, I'll document all of that in the final transition memo I'm preparing for IT. Don't worry, it'll be ready by my last day." My 2 weeks' notice was fascinating to watch. Richard was so pleased with himself. He'd successfully eliminated a $75,000 salary and replaced it with a $35,000 one. He'd kept his nephew happy. He'd shown upper management that he could optimize operations. Meanwhile, I meticulously documented every single thing Kyle would need to know. I created spreadsheets listing every client, every contract, every renewal date. I wrote detailed instructions on filing protocols and compliance requirements. I held daily training sessions where I walked him through scenario after scenario. What I didn't do was give him any actual access to anything. "When will I get the login credentials?" Kyle asked on day 3 of my notice period. "Oh, IT has to set all that up," I said smoothly. "It's a security protocol thing. They'll get you sorted once I officially leave." That was technically true. IT would need to set up his permissions, but I was the one who had always coordinated that process with IT because I understood what access levels were needed for what functions, and I hadn't coordinated anything for Kyle because nobody had asked me to. Richard never checked. He assumed that transition meant Kyle would automatically inherit all my system access. He didn't understand that digital permissions don't just magically transfer when someone leaves. David Kim, our IT director, actually approached me on day 7. "Hey, Victoria, I heard you're leaving. Do you need me to start transitioning your system access to someone?" "Has Richard submitted a transfer request?" I asked innocently. "No, I haven't gotten any paperwork." "Well, I wouldn't want to step on any toes or bypass proper procedures. Maybe check with Richard?" David shrugged and walked away. He was stretched thin managing 20 other priorities. If Richard didn't specifically request something, it wasn't David's job to anticipate it. Amanda from HR caught me in the hallway on day 9. "Victoria, I just want you to know I'm really sorry about how this went down. I argued against it for what it's worth." "I appreciate that, Amanda. Richard's making a mistake. You built systems he doesn't even understand." I smiled. "I'm sure it'll all work out." She gave me a long look. "You're being remarkably calm about this." "I'm a professional," I said. "I would never let personal feelings affect my work quality." Meanwhile, I meticulously documented every single thing Kyle would need to know. I created spreadsheets listing every client, every contract, every renewal date. I wrote detailed instructions on filing protocols and compliance requirements. I held daily training sessions where I walked him through scenario after scenario. What I didn't do was give him any actual access to anything. "When will I get the login credentials?" Kyle asked on day 3 of my notice period. "Oh, IT has to set all that up," I said smoothly. "It's a security protocol thing. They'll get you sorted once I officially leave." That was technically true. IT would need to set up his permissions, but I was the one who had always coordinated that process with IT because I understood what access levels were needed for what functions, and I hadn't coordinated anything for Kyle because nobody had asked me to. Richard never checked. He assumed that transition meant Kyle would automatically inherit all my system access. He didn't understand that digital permissions don't just magically transfer when someone leaves. David Kim, our IT director, actually approached me on day 7. "Hey, Victoria, I heard you're leaving. Do you need me to start transitioning your system access to someone?" "Has Richard submitted a transfer request?" I asked innocently. "No, I haven't gotten any paperwork." "Well, I wouldn't want to step on any toes or bypass proper procedures. Maybe check with Richard?" David shrugged and walked away. He was stretched thin managing 20 other priorities. If Richard didn't specifically request something, it wasn't David's job to anticipate it. Amanda from HR caught me in the hallway on day 9. "Victoria, I just want you to know I'm really sorry about how this went down. I argued against it for what it's worth." "I appreciate that, Amanda. Richard's making a mistake. You built systems he doesn't even understand." I smiled. "I'm sure it'll all work out." She gave me a long look. "You're being remarkably calm about this." "I'm a professional," I said. "I would never let personal feelings affect my work quality." That was completely true. I was being entirely professional. I was doing exactly what they'd asked, working my notice period and preparing transition documentation. It wasn't my fault they hadn't asked me to do the one thing that actually mattered. My final day, Friday, April 26th, was almost anticlimactic. Richard was in client meetings all morning. Kyle was shadowing him, probably getting pumped up about his big promotion. Catherine was traveling. Amanda processed my exit paperwork with genuine regret in her eyes. I put together a comprehensive transition binder for Kyle, I told Amanda, handing her a 3-inch thick document. Every process, every procedure, every client detail he could possibly need. This is incredibly thorough, Amanda said, flipping through it. Thank you for being so professional about this, Victoria. A lot of people wouldn't handle it so gracefully. I believe in doing things the right way, I said, and I meant it. At 4:30 p.m., I packed up my personal items, a few photos, my coffee mug, some books. I said goodbye to colleagues who were genuinely sad to see me go. Several of them whispered that they thought this was a terrible decision, that Richard was an idiot, and that I deserved better. I turned in my building access card, my company laptop, and my parking pass. I walked out of Pinnacle Consulting Group for the last time as an employee, got in my car, and drove home. And then I waited. The first call came on Monday morning at 8:47 a.m. I was at a coffee shop browsing job listings on my laptop when my personal phone rang. Richard Thompson. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9:15, then 9:43, then 10:20. Finally, at 10:52, I answered. Hello? Victoria, thank God. We have a situation here. Richard sounded stressed, which was unusual for him. Kyle can't access the Contract Pro system. He's getting an error message. Can you walk him through how to log in? Did he try using the credentials IT provided? IT says they can't give him access because they need administrative approval to create new admin accounts, but you were the... Richard, I don't work there anymore. I don't have remote access to your systems. But you could tell us what the admin password is, right? Just so we can get him set up? The admin credentials are company property. I provided all relevant information to IT during my exit process. Have you submitted a formal access request to David Kim? We're trying to reach David, but he's dealing with some server issue. This is urgent, Victoria. We have a client contract that needs to be executed today. Can you please just help us out? I'm sorry, Richard. I'm no longer employed by Pinnacle. I can't access company systems. You'll need to work with your IT department. There was a long pause. Are you seriously going to be difficult about this? I'm not being difficult. I'm following proper security protocols. All my login credentials should have been transferred before I left. If they weren't, that's an internal process issue you'll need to resolve with IT and HR. I hung up. The next call came from Amanda at 11:30. Victoria, I'm so sorry to bother you. Richard is in a panic. Can you please clarify what credentials Kyle needs to access the contract system? Amanda, I documented everything in my transition materials. The issue isn't information, it's that nobody set up proper system access before I left. IT needs to create new administrative accounts, which requires following your company's security protocols. How long does that usually take? When I did it, about 15 minutes, but I had admin privileges. Creating a new admin from scratch requires approval from IT security, verification procedures, two-factor authentication setup, probably 2 to 3 business days if everyone moves quickly. 3 days? Amanda's voice went up. We have contracts that need to be processed. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I really have to go. I have a job interview this afternoon. I didn't, but I wanted to get off the phone. The calls kept coming throughout the week. Richard, Amanda, David from IT, even Catherine Brooks called me personally on Wednesday.
Victoria, I understand there may be some hard feelings about your termination, Catherine said in her CEO voice, but we're in a genuine crisis here. We have clients threatening to walk because we can't execute contract amendments. Our legal team can't access documents they need for an ongoing dispute. We're facing potential breach of contract situations. That sounds serious, I said sympathetically. What does your IT department say? They're working on it, but apparently the system architecture you set up was more complex than anyone realized. They're saying it could take 2 weeks to fully restore administrative access and recreate the permission structures. 2 weeks sounds about right. These systems were built over 6 years. They have multiple layers of security and authentication. Is there any way you could just help? I'm authorized to offer you a consulting fee. Now we were getting somewhere. What kind of consulting fee? $500 for a few hours of your time to get us back up and running. I almost laughed. $500? Catherine, I'm the only person who fully understands the system architecture that runs your entire contract operation, the system that manages agreements worth millions of dollars in annual revenue, and you want to pay me $500? What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply pointing out that specialized technical consulting comes at specialized rates. If you'd like to make me a serious offer, I'm happy to consider it, but I'm also fielding multiple job opportunities right now, so my availability is limited. I'll have to discuss this with Richard and the board. You do that. Have a good day, Catherine. Thursday afternoon, I got an email from Catherine. Subject line, consulting proposal. They were offering me a 1-week consulting contract at $200 per hour, 40 hours total, to assist with system transition and knowledge transfer. That's $8,000 for the week, more than my entire severance package. I countered, 2-week contract, $350 per hour, 80 hours total. That's $28,000. Plus, I wanted a formal letter of apology for the wrongful redundancy determination and a commitment to provide outstanding references.
Oh, and Richard Thompson couldn't be my point of contact. I'd work directly with Catherine and David from IT. Friday morning, Catherine called. Your terms are acceptable. We need you to start Monday. We have a major client contract renewal that's been stuck in limbo, and they're threatening to move to a competitor. I'll need the signed contract and the apology letter before I start. Done. I'll have Amanda email everything within the hour. One more thing, I said. Kyle keeps his job. This wasn't his fault, and he's a decent kid, but he needs proper training from people who actually understand what they're doing, not rushed garbage from his uncle who was more focused on saving money than ensuring continuity. Agreed. To be honest, we're reconsidering Richard's position as well. This has revealed some serious gaps in his operational oversight. That was the best news I'd heard all week. I returned to Pinnacle Consulting Group the following Monday, not as an employee, but as a highly paid consultant. The dynamic was immediately different. Richard tried to approach me in the lobby. Victoria, I'm glad we could work this out. I'm here to consult with IT and executive leadership, I cut him off. Please direct all communication through Catherine's office. His face went red, but he walked away. I spent 2 weeks rebuilding what they'd broken. I set up proper system access for Kyle, trained him thoroughly on things he actually needed to know, and created sustainable processes that didn't depend on any single person. I also quietly documented every security vulnerability and process failure that had led to this situation, and I made sure Catherine saw all of it. On my final day of consulting, Catherine called me into her office. Victoria, I want to apologize again for how this situation was handled. Richard made a series of extremely poor decisions based on incomplete information and personal bias. He's been placed on a performance improvement plan. I appreciate you telling me. I also want to offer you your old position back, your full salary plus a 20% raise plus a title change to Senior Legal Operations Manager. You'd report directly to me instead of Richard, and we'd restructure the department to ensure proper succession planning and knowledge transfer. I'd already accepted a position at a competitor with a 35% raise over my old salary, but it felt good to be wanted. I appreciate the offer, Catherine, but I've already committed to another opportunity. However, I'd be happy to consult on setting up your new operational structure, at my consulting rate, of course. She actually smiled. Of course. Send me a proposal. 6 months later, I'm thriving in my new role at a competitor firm. They value my expertise, pay me what I'm worth, and actually listen when I tell them about operational risks. I heard through the grapevine that Richard Thompson was fired 3 months after my departure. Apparently, the board lost confidence in his judgment after the contract crisis, and several other questionable decisions came to light during the review.
Kyle is still there, doing fine from what I hear. He reached out to thank me for insisting they keep him and for the proper training I provided during my consulting stint. He's learned a valuable lesson about the difference between being hired for your connections and earning your place through competence. As for Pinnacle Consulting Group, they now have a 3-person legal operations team, formal succession planning, documented system access procedures, and regular security audits. It only took a near disaster and $28,000 in emergency consulting fees for them to realize that maybe, just maybe, the quiet woman who'd been keeping everything running for 6 years was worth keeping around. The lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about value. For 6 years, I made myself indispensable by being excellent at my job, but I made the mistake of making it look easy. When you're really good at something, people forget how hard it actually is. They assume anyone could do it. They take you for granted. Richard Thompson thought he could replace 6 years of institutional knowledge and technical expertise with an entry-level nephew and a few weeks of training. He learned the expensive way that some roles can't be easily replicated, no matter how good your documentation is. My advice? If you're in a specialized role, make sure people understand your value. Document your work, yes, but also make sure leadership understands the complexity of what you do. Don't hide your light under a bushel. And most importantly, never let one person become a single point of failure in critical systems, but also make sure the person who built those systems is properly valued and compensated. As for passwords and system access, always follow proper security protocols. Always work with IT to ensure appropriate transitions. But also remember, digital infrastructure is only as good as the people who understand it. And that understanding is worth far more than most companies realize, usually until it's too late. My name is Victoria Hayes. I was made redundant once. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.